And it is time to rock and roll. So we're going to get this thing started on time. We are going to end it on time. We're talking 30 minutes. So I'm not going to hold you long, but I do want to give you something that I think would be very helpful if you're interested in public speaking and getting better at it from a technique standpoint, and also making sure that you are able to really express yourself as a leader, as someone who is credible, as someone who is guiding a group of people, whatever that looks like for you. And here's the best part, you don't need a title in order to be a leader. That's something I'm pretty passionate about. So let me introduce myself. If you don't know me, my name is Eddie Francis, and I have been speaking for 25 plus years now professionally, but I have been a public speaker since, goodness gracious, 16 years old. I was on my high school speech and debate team. I spoke when I was in college. I was in my fraternity's oratorical contest. I went to the national oratorical contest, and then I started speaking professionally around 1999. So it is a pleasure to have you here with me. Thank you so much for taking the time to hang out with me. And this is about public speaking as a leadership imperative. And so I want you to, first of all, imagine a scenario. I want you to imagine that you are attending a town hall meeting. Now, you walk into this meeting thinking to yourself, I'm just going to observe. I just want to hear what people have to say. So you're listening to folks express their concerns, give their ideas, but then things don't necessarily seem right to you. Something is off. You're hearing some uninformed opinions. You're hearing people who are misinformed about certain things. And you know the facts. And so you decide, you know what? No, I have to say something. So you raise your hand, and at the time that you raise your hand, something happens. Woof. Every single head in the room turns in your direction. Or if it's a virtual town hall meeting, everybody just stops and they just look at the screen. Some people who are savvy are going to look directly into the lens of their laptop or their phone or their device to let you know that you have their attention. It is at that point that you become the leader of the room. Everyone is expecting you to say something that makes sense, something that is informative, maybe even something that's entertaining if they know you in that way. But at that point, when you decide to speak in front of a group of people, you are the leader of the room. That's not the only place where that sort of thing happens. That's not the only scenario. Think about a meeting at the job. Folks are talking about their ideas in some sort of brainstorming session, and you get everyone's attention in the room. Everyone stops. Whoop, they look at you. You're the leader of the room. It could be a job interview. You have a panel of people interviewing you. They ask you a question. They stop and they look at you, and they're waiting for you to say something that is going to make sense. You could be a member of a community organization or maybe a professional association. You're in a planning meeting and you have an idea or you have a report. Everyone stops and they look at you. So, whenever anyone chooses to speak publicly about anything, at that point, you become the leader of a room or the leader among a group of people, and you don't need a title to be the leader at that point. There is a late public speaking coach by the name of Ron Arden. I used to work for a division of monster.com called Making It Count Programs. And Ron was contracted to speak to a group of us, and we are all these speakers going to these high schools and colleges across the country. And so Ron, as someone at the time who was a world-renowned public speaking coach, I mean, we just hung on his every single word. And there are two things that he said that I will never forget, and it's how I start my coaching with my clients. And those two things are: one, he or she who speaks leads. That's the first thing he said that really caught my attention. He or she who speaks leads. The second thing that Ron said is, you can't be a leader if you don't own your opinions. Again, you can't be a leader if you don't own your opinions. Now, if I had to kind of massage what he said at the time, I would say you can't be a leader if you don't own your message. So, the question here, and the reason I brought you here today, is how do you own the message? Well, let's look at another scenario. Now, I want you to imagine, or maybe this is your life, that you are middle management at your company. Now, I've been in middle management before, and middle management can be a tough position to be in because you have to gain the trust of two different parties mainly. And these two parties can be diametrically opposed at times. The one party would be the people who report to you. You have to gain their trust for whatever reason. But the other group whose trust you have to gain would be the executives. And so you're in this position where, as middle management, you have led this project, and it was a big project, and you have to do a presentation. And with this presentation, you have a call to action. Now, taking a look at this scenario, let's imagine that you have to do this presentation for an all hands on deck meeting. Again, it could be virtual or it could be in person. And the meeting could be 50 people, it could be 100 people, 200 people, depending on the size of your organization. And as you are giving this presentation, you are winding up to make the big ask because you have this call to action. Now, let's say the call to action is for everyone to fill out a survey. But see, let me give you some background on this survey. This survey is very important for you to do the work of your division. And see, the people in your company, they may or may not respond well to surveys. As a matter of fact, they tend to do okay depending on what the survey is. And you're thinking to yourself, I'm going to have to really persuade them to do this particular survey. So here you are about to make the big ask for everyone to fill out this survey. And all you need them to do is to click a link and to take the survey. It's only going to take them a couple of minutes, but you know your people. Now, there's a difference in the way that you ask for people to do this. And on one hand, the way you make the ask could be, so yeah, that's it. That's my presentation. We get an opportunity, just go ahead, click the link and complete the survey. So I'm going to take you a couple of minutes. Or the ask could be, listen, we have this survey. It is very important for us to get the results that we're looking for to push this project forward. And so please take a couple of minutes, just a couple of minutes, click the link, all right, and fill out the survey today. Now, what's the difference in there? The difference is definitely that one ask is a bit more animated than the other, but the biggest thing is this. On the second one, I'm actually making my ask with more intention. And what that intention means, or what that intention looks like, I should say, is my using certain techniques to get people's attention so that I, as a leader, can go ahead and get the results that I'm trying to get. Because as a leader, I'm trying to guide people in a certain direction. And this survey is a really big deal. And so the thing is that there are these techniques that people can use in order to make sure that their messages land. And as a leader, it is even more important for you to make sure that your messages land with people. Because what are you doing as a leader? You're trying to guide a group of people, right? But the thing is that you're trying to communicate certain things. As a leader, you're trying to communicate expectations to your audience. You are trying to communicate plans that you're trying to move forward. You're trying to communicate the mission of the organization, the values of the organization, even if you don't explicitly state the mission and the values and the vision of that organization. As a leader, you have to somehow represent those things. You are trying to communicate specific directions that you want people to follow. Or as a leader, you're trying to communicate the brand of the organization, etc. And so, how you do this relies, believe it or not, on some of the natural tools that you already have. And it's up to you to figure out how to use those tools. So, what are the tools that we're talking about? The tools are what we call three letters VPB. 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 Voice, pace, and also body language. Those are three techniques that you can use as a leader to make sure that your messages land. And public speaking is one of the most effective ways for you as a leader to express what it is that you need people to do in order for your community or your organization to move forward, to accomplish the goals that you need them to accomplish. So let's talk about this first thing, voice. So this is probably one of the things that I have the most fun coaching people on. And when it comes to voice, and I really appreciate my man coming in a little earlier, Simply Deep 1985, saying I have a nice radio voice. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate that. But I have a secret for you. You don't necessarily need a nice voice in order to be effective. Actually, what you have to figure out is how to use your voice well. So, your voice is a tool, and I want you to think of it this way: you could have a hammer and a nail. You have to know how to use the hammer in order to drive the nail. It could be the best hammer. You could have gone out and gotten the most expensive hammer that you could think about. You were at the hardware store, you saw this hammer and you said, "That's a nice hammer." And you went and got this hammer and you thought to yourself, if I buy the nicest hammer, I'm going to be able to drive nails with brilliance. You get home, you're about to drive the nail. You have this awesome tool that you bought, and whack, 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 the hammer's going all over the place. you you have to learn how to use the tool. And so when it comes to your voice, first of all, is a muscle. And one of the first things to think about is the fact that you want to know how to use this muscle well. And it is entirely possible to abuse the muscle to a place that you can't use it. So if you think about working out your body, right? You think about working out, let's say you're going to do arms today. You go to the gym or you go your garage or some room or some place in the house or whatever you do, you go outside and you start your arm workout. You know, if you're someone who works your body out physically, you know that if you do too much, you run the risk of tearing your muscles. But you also might know, if you're used to working out, that there's a certain way to do it so that you are responsible with your muscles. And so with your voice, you want to be responsible. My late father was a singer. He was professionally trained. We're talking about a dude who got his bachelor's degree in music from Xavier University, Louisiana, and he got his master's degree in music from Indiana University. Serious program. He was a serious singer. He sang opera, as a matter of fact, and he trained a lot of people. And one of the things that I remember him saying so much is, the thing I can't stand about some of these modern singers, and we're talking about the 70s and 80s, I can't stand how some of these people just scream. I don't see how they even keep their voices alive. And if you hear people who are not responsible in the way that they treat their voices when they sing, after every single show, they're like this. And that's because they strain the voice a little too much. So what happens, or what a lot of singers will do, is they'll figure out how to use that instrument a lot better. And here's the thing, here's part of the secret that I teach people. What we naturally do when we speak, most of us, and this is very natural, this is human, is we tend to speak, a lot of us, through our nasal passage. And so if you listen to me when I pinch my nose here, you can tell that all the air, a lot of the air is going through my nasal passage as I speak. So, what you want to learn how to do is you want to learn how to speak from the diaphragm. And when you learn how to speak from the diaphragm, then you get a richer sound out of your voice. I grab my nose because I don't feel my nose buzzing anymore. And so, with me, I naturally speak from my diaphragm. That's the way I was trained to speak. And you can be trained to do the same thing. And you could have a high pitched voice. It's not about necessarily making your voice deep or anything like that. It's about getting a richer sound from it, no matter what the quality is, no matter what octave you might be. That's what speaking from the diaphragm is. The reason that's so important is that when it's time for you to speak louder to a group of people, then they can hear that richer sound. And when you hear a rich sound come from someone's voice, think about this. When something you hear grabs your attention, what do? You stop. And so that's one tool with your voice. The other tool with your voice is inflection, using vocal dynamics. Did you know that you could say one sentence or ask one question and get several different questions out of the same question? I'm going to show you how. Let's take a very simple question. Are you going to the store today? Let's put an emphasis on every word in that sentence, going down the line of each word. Are you going to the store today? 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 I just asked several different questions by using inflection and by emphasizing different words in a sentence. And the more intentional you are when you were speaking in how you emphasize words, the more of an effect you can have on the audience because they realize what it is that you were really asking them or what it is that you were really telling them. Now, the second element here, the second tool would be pacing. Pacing is probably one of the most effective things that anyone can use in speech. So, some people, like me, are high energy. And so, a lot of times, what we'll do if we're high energy is we'll keep the pace up a lot of times when we're speaking, especially if there's some sort of story I want to tell. And maybe it's a funny story or it's an exciting story. And I want the audience to have a lot of energy with me. I want to pull some energy from the audience. So, I might pick up the pace a little bit when I'm speaking. Or I could be telling the same type of story, but I really want everyone to get what I'm talking about. And I want it all to sink in as I'm speaking. So I slow the pace down. As a matter of fact, I did this earlier when I started, when I did the quote by Ron Arden. I used one of the most effective pacing techniques that anyone can use in public speaking: pause. If you remember when I started, I said, he or she who speaks leads, as that quote from Ron Arden, and I paused because I wanted you to hear it. He or she who speaks leads. Now, depending on the kind of person you are, too, you want to think about your pace. So, once again, I'm a high energy speaker. And so I think of it as a lot of times I want to take everybody on a verbal joyride with me. So I get up on stage or I get behind a podium and I'll get high energy and I'll keep the pace up a lot of times. Or if I want to get the audience's attention right away in a talk, then I'll start it off with a nice, high, energetic pace. But then at some point, I want everyone to really hear what I'm saying and I want them to get the point and I want to be serious. And because what I'm saying is a serious point, I'm going to slow the pace down. But then as I get to the end of the speech, I want to end on a high note. So I pick up the pace again and I'll end the speech that way. So pacing is a very powerful tool, a natural tool that you can use in public speaking. And then finally, there's probably the most effective tool that anyone can use, and that is body language. Because Our bodies tell on us all the time, don't they? We can't hide body language a lot of times. We can try because we're thinking one thing, but then our body will do something else and give us completely away. Don't we experience this in our personal relationships where someone will say, "Hey, Eddie, what's wrong with you?" Nothing, nothing. My body language just gave it all away. Something is absolutely going on with me, right? And so when you do a talk, when you get up in front of a group of people, imagine 1,000 people who you just lied to. Imagine that. You're thinking one thing, you're telling them one thing, but then your body language says something completely different. Imagine that. Imagine all these people looking at you and saying, "Nah, this person is not telling me the truth at all. Look at the way they're moving their hands. Look at the thing that they're doing." You ever notice that they keep every time they say a certain thing, they look a certain way, they turn their heads a certain way? What are they hiding from me? So the thing is that the body often delivers a stronger language than your words or your voice or your pace, and the trick is allowing your movement to align with your message. But then also the way you move could also align with your identity. um, I spoke to, or at least I coached, someone who was a university system trustee. And I'll never forget, this was a really, really cool guy. And the first thing he told me was, "Listen, Eddie, I don't want to be like Tony Robbins." He didn't have a problem with Tony Robbins, but what he was saying was he didn't want me to try to turn him into this high powered motivational speaker. And so one of the things I make sure I do with folks is I make sure I take the time to try to understand who they are. Because if I understand who you are, then I can figure out the techniques that are really going to align with you and make you be effective. And after I talked to this man, I imagined him being the type of person who I say, "Hey, you know what? I'm going to come over to the house," and I go to his house and I bring over some lemonade and I pour us a couple of glasses of lemonade and we just sit on the porch and we just go ahead and we shoot it for a while. Just chill. Cuz that's the kind of personality he had, the sit down chill personality. And so the body language that we worked on for him were subtle movements. So I imagine him being behind a podium. And I imagine that while he's speaking, he has kind of an easy pace as he's speaking. And I also imagined that with him, his voice, he didn't yell, he didn't have to be loud or anything, but he did have to get people's attention. But the thing is that I imagined as he was speaking that his movements might be more subtle. If he's making a point and he's being really cool and open with people, he'll do simple things like maybe extending an open hand to his audience or something like that. He might go for the politician thumb, as I call it, the politician thumb. He might go for some subtle movements, and that's who this person is. But again, if it's somebody like me who's high energy, even if I'm behind a podium, my body language is going to be big. It's going to be hands extended away from the body. And it's also going to be a lot of eye contact. Now, I will say that with this guy, because he was someone who was so laid back and so subtle, I thought a big deal for him would be to make eye contact with the audience and to make sure that he would pick out certain people in the audience. If he's telling a story, he tells a story and he sets up his story and he picks one person in the audience and he delivers his punchline to the story or the point of his story. And if it was a story that was meant to empower people or to make people feel at ease, I told him, "You need to add a smile to your stuff because people need to know that you were with them." And that worked out really well with him. So you know that there are three tools that you can use: voice, pacing, body language, so that you can make your message come alive as a leader. And so that people can really understand what it is that you are trying to get them to accomplish with you. Now, there are a couple of things that I want to note. All right. So, to be sure, these are not the only tools that you can use in public speaking, but they're some of the best tools that you can use. Not only that, one tool can compensate for other tools. So let's say that you are someone who has mobility challenges. And so, walking across a stage or being high energy movement, that might not work for you because of your mobility challenges. And so, The thing that's going to help you compensate for that would be the way that you use your voice. It would be the way that you pace as you speak. The other thing, and I think this is really important, is that you have to be confident in yourself as a leader. Confidence is everything, and you have to know who you are and be comfortable with who you are. If you are someone who, once again, is really laid back and you say to yourself, no, 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 I want to be the most energetic speaker out there and I want people to, and I'm going, well, wait a minute, is that really who you are? Is that really your personality? Because if you try that, nobody's going to believe you. And so it's important for you to know who you are, to be confident in who you are. The other thing is that great techniques cannot compensate for a poorly written or poorly structured speech. And so it is important to really understand how to structure your speech so that the techniques will align with it and complement that. And the other thing I'll say is this: admittedly, I love technique coaching, but it's not the end all be all of public speaking. Technique coaching is actually probably the most effective thing that you can do. So, with that being said, there are some things I want to leave you with as we start to wrap up. We got 4 minutes here. The first thing is this recording is going to live on my YouTube, and so this is going to be saved. If you want to share this link with colleagues or with friends, then please feel free to do that. I would really appreciate it if you did. As a matter of fact. The other thing is, if you really want to get an idea of what it is you want to accomplish in public speaking, then I'm gonna suggest a trick. Make a recording of yourself and watch that recording. And you can watch yourself. But then at some point, I want you to close your eyes and listen to yourself and ask yourself, do I believe this person who is speaking right now? That is a critical question to ask. Very critical. And if you say to yourself, I'm not necessarily convinced that this person is an effective speaker, then decide what it is that you want to do. Decide on your next steps. Um, the other thing that I would say is this: pay attention to the feedback that people give you when it comes to public speaking. Some people may say things that are very revealing to you. They may say things like, well, I didn't quite catch everything you said. There were some words that got lost. So that could either be an articulation issue or they literally could not hear you when you were speaking because you might have been speaking too low. Then they might say things like, you didn't look all that excited to be up there. That might be a body language issue that you need to work on. Or they might tell you the one thing that you probably don't want to hear: you didn't really look like yourself up there. And you didn't sound like yourself. And that's where that whole thing about knowing yourself comes in. I'm going to leave you with probably one of the worst things I ever did as a speaker. I actually had this one speaking engagement that I was just dying to do. I had been after this major university, and this happened years ago, probably about 15 years ago. And I was so nervous when I got the gig. I went to go do the thing, and I thought to myself, this is a serious place. These are serious people. And so I need to be a serious speaker. Big mistake for me. And so I wanted to be profound the night of the speech. And so I got up there and I did a nice, profound speech and I dropped all these deep quotes and everything. And after the presentation, one of my frat brothers was there, and he's somebody who I really trust. And I asked him, what did you think? Because I really wanted his feedback. I knew he was going to give it to me straight. And he said, Ed, that wasn't you. I don't know who that was up there, but that wasn't you. That was my biggest lesson in being myself. That was my biggest lesson. I should have done what I knew how to do. And so, with that being said, if you are interested in learning more about public speaking coaching, then you can email me, eddie@eddiefrancis.com. My contact information is here on YouTube. You can go to my website, eddiefrancis.com. Here's my offer: a free, a free 30-minute brainstorming call. No obligations. We can talk for 30 minutes. We can really go through what it is that you're thinking about in terms of your public speaking. And if at the end of that call you say, you know what, I know what to do. Thanks a lot, Eddie. and I never hear from you again, no problem. I'm really glad to have helped you, and I really hope that you do extremely well in your public speaking practice. If you decide that you want to have another conversation after that, then by all means, I would love to have that next conversation with you. So with that, it is 1:30, and I want to thank you so much for choosing to spend 30 minutes with me. And so again, the website is eddiefrancis.com, and I really hope to hear from you, and I hope you have an excellent day. Thank you so much.